Wing Women Weekend Nashville! Woohoo! Our next Wing Women Weekend takes place in Nashville, Tennessee, January 17th to 20th, 2025. Are you a woman in the LGBTQIA community who is looking to make friends, relax, unwind, and have fun? You have a burning desire to be a part of the queer community, but you're too shy to go out on your own. If so, then this event is for you. Join your Wing Women hosts, Anne-Marie Zanzal and Tonda McKay, for some socializing, Southern barbecue, dancing at the Lipstick Lounge, one of America's last remaining lesbian bars, and much more. This is the perfect opportunity to step out of your comfort zone and make new queer friends, aka your Wing Women. Spaces are limited. Don't delay. Reserve your spot today. For more information and to sign up, visit www.wingwomenweekend.com. That's wingwomenweekend.com. Hey queer friends, are you ready to be inspired? Welcome to Season 5 of Coming Out and Beyond, a podcast that shares stories from the LGBTQIA community. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Hey, this is Anne-Marie with Coming Out and Beyond LGBTQIA stories. I have a question for you today. What would it be like if you knew you were in the wrong body your whole life? That you had been assigned one gender at birth, but deep in your soul and in your brain, you knew you were another gender, and there was nothing you can do about it. Well, my guest, Wendy Cole, is going to talk about that today with me. From an early age, Wendy knew in her heart that she was a girl, but she struggled to conform to the expectations of her family and society. It wasn't until the age of 67 that Wendy finally found the courage to embrace her true self and undergo her life-changing transition. In doing so, she embarked on a personal journey of self-acceptance, shedding the fears, doubts, and anxieties that had held her back for so long. Within 6 months, Wendy was able to start living as her authentic self. Today, Wendy draws on her own experiences and studies to mentor and coach others through their own major life transitions. Using techniques such as visioning, mindfulness, and shifting beliefs and energy, she guides her clients in making profound changes to their lives and health and find happiness in being their true self. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Anne-Marie. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. So I'm going to ask you the most loaded question you've heard today, and that is, tell me your story.
Okay. Oh, well, I was assigned male at birth. Based on my physical anatomy, the doctor pronounced it's a boy. But somewhere along the line in the second trimester, gender identity, which is formed in the frontal cortex of the brain, I got a huge dose of female identity. And sexual orientation, that's also formed in the amygdala of the brain in the second trimester. And the gender identity thing was overwhelming to me. I knew from age 3, I was different. By 4 and 5, especially when I started school, very huge difference. Boys line up over there, girls line up over there. I wanted to be over with them, but no, I had to be over here because the first thing that happens once the doctor announces it's a boy or it's a girl, that's when socialization begins from the parents. And I was being raised as a boy. There was a lot of family dynamics as to why my father was so desperate for a son, but oh, that was it. I was the boy.
So are you the youngest then in your family? Were you the
I was an only child
Okay.
of that. I found out in later life that I had 2 half sisters from my father's previous marriage, but that's another story.
Well, and that also explains his such a really huge desire to have a boy. Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
continue the family name.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. And plus, I did find out at age 10, I could not hold this back.
Mm-hmm.
I told my parents I was a girl, and I was promptly taken to a psychiatric center where the psychiatrist, talking past me to my parents, said, "Oh, once he had, this is just a little transvestism. He's too young to diagnose as a transsexual." Transgender wasn't a word then.
No, it wasn't.
So you were either transvestite or transsexual.
Are they the same?
No.
Can you tell me the difference?
Transvestite is somebody who today actually now is a crossdresser.
Okay. All right.
They occasionally, again, gender is a continuum, a spectrum, a
Right.
matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who is really enjoys cross-dressing, and that's as far as they want to go with this,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't get a huge dose of female identity. They're
Mm-hmm.
somewhere over the line a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
basically are very content to continue their lives as males. A lot don't want to give up their male privilege.
Right.
Um, and I can't tell you how many people in the cross-dressing community have told me I could never do what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Turned my entire life upside down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Basically, everybody from my previous life is gone,
Mm-hmm.
except for my ex-wife.
Wow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We're just friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we divorced amicably and went our separate ways.
Mm-hmm. So
Long story with that.
getting back to your young boy,
Yeah.
your assigned male at birth, the psychiatrist is talking past you, never asked you any questions about this or anything like that, labeled you, tried to label you as something, but said he couldn't because you were too young yet. I mean, it's
Yeah.
everything you hear,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
So did you put it away?
I we saw the psychiatrist 5 times, 4 or 5 times.
Mhm.
I when I announced to the psychiatrist that, having a career, a wife, a house, and a family wouldn't fix me. I'm a girl. I
Wow,
was
you were
taken
pretty
from I,
steadfast.
I was taken from the groom. I
Mhm.
sat in the waiting room with an assistant, and he continued the session with my parents. There were Most of the sessions were with my parents. On a few, I was included for a while. At the end of what turned out to be the last session, my mother turned to me, which really hurt. She said, because I was hoping she would help me.
Right.
Um, what I didn't realize is she was a typical 1950s housewife,
Mm-hmm.
totally under my father's control.
Mm-hmm.
I also found out in my early 20s, as after we left that last session, my mother turned to me and said, "Stop saying you're a girl. Stop thinking this way. Um, Hide the secret. It's nothing that you're going to continue with. You're a boy, and that's how you're going to be. And if you don't stop, we're going to take you back to the psychiatric center and have you committed and fixed."
Wow. That was scary, wasn't it?
In the late 1950s. Oh, yeah. I had
Yeah.
no idea what it meant, but
Mhm.
okay. I opened the door. I said what I felt, and this is what I got back.
So you learned to keep your mouth shut.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
And repress, repress, repress.
Mhm.
Senior year of college. Couldn't take it anymore. I'm getting ready to graduate. Another big, scary life change. I'm out in the world now. What am I going to do?
Mhm.
And anyway, that's when I decided, no, I'm going to try this again. I got a psychiatrist. I don't know what really prompted me to go that route, but I thought maybe a psychiatrist can help me with this and help me deal with this. And I still had no idea really what my diagnosis was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he started working with me. I started coming out to neighbors. I started coming out to people. I was living off campus and away from everyone at school, so I could pretty much do what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he took me to be a case study patient at a quarterly meeting of psychiatrists in the Schenectady, Albany, Troy, New York area. Okay. So I'm in this hospital conference room in Schenectady, New York, with about 15 to 20 psychiatrists.
All male, I'm sure, right?
There was one female.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. But you're right. All males.
All white males too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. This was 1970, you said, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm sitting there and I start talking. I don't get any more than 4 or 5 minutes in. And one of the men stands up, big tall guy, and looks around the room and says, "Well, I'll see you all next quarter." Turns, looks at me and says, "You're a freak. You should move to New York City and turn tricks like the rest of them."
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Again, no social media, no internet, no resources, and I was clueless
Mm-hmm.
of what I was doing, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that pretty much wiped me out.
Of course.
And at my next session with my psychiatrist, but that also ended that meeting, by the way, uh, he informs me that this is a psychological condition with no cure and no treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I could help you, but I don't think I can. I'm not sure what we're going to do. And he made a few other requests, like getting my parents involved with this,
Mm-hmm.
which I
Well, that
didn't think
didn't
I
go well, did
needed to
you, for the
do. But
first time, right?
apparently, because I was still being supported by them
Mm-hmm.
ending my college years, they had to be part of this. So, and it didn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
It totally basically blew up my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, from there, that's when I decided, okay, I know it's BS about having a wife and a career and a family and all of that stuff would fix me. No, but I'll try it.
So
Hmm.
you put it away, and
Oh, and
like, did you?
you,
Okay, so like in my own experience, like, we have a saying in the later in life group community that straight girls don't lie awake at night wondering if they're gay, you know? And so my queerness, I put it away, I put it on the shelf, and I did exactly what I was supposed. Our stories sound a little bit similar. I,
hmm
I got married, I had 4 kids, I did everything I was supposed to do. And
hmm
but it would pop up now and then. And whether it was usually around an attraction to somebody who was clearly a lesbian. And it would pop up and then I would put it away. Pop up. Did
hmm
yours pop up or did it just go away?
Mine never went away.
Hmm.
It was constantly there,
Hmm.
and I had to control it.
Hmm.
And it's that incongruence between your gender identity, who you know you are, and the rest of your body
Hmm.
is in so disruptive to your entire life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I've had I when I began my transition, I moved into a community, New Hope, Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Used to be called, I guess, in the 80s, the San Francisco of the East.
Ah.
Large gay community.
Hmm.
That's when I discovered also that gay people didn't really understand this.
No, they don't typically. So I mean, a
And
lot do. I think
right,
sometimes the younger generation is better than people that are older. Because they've had visibility, they've had representation, so they're a little bit better than people that are our age, that
well,
just are.
I found that generally from the later 20s and 30s and on up, there's a big gap of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And once I discovered that, because I moved there thinking that um, they would totally get me and understand, but um, I one day I come home. I had only lived in that apartment for a week. I come home on a Saturday afternoon, flowers at my front door. Welcome to the neighborhood, Chad and Jason, number 15.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got three gay couples on the street, um, two cisgender couples, and then it's a mixed bag of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a small neighborhood in a bigger community. And my first conversation with Chad and Jason lasted from 9 o'clock on a Sunday evening, where they said, "Are you one of the cross dressers that are just moving into town and just going to live here, you know, while you cross dress and do your thing, or are you a cisgender woman? That's the running bet in the neighborhood."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "No, I'm neither.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was born transgender. I am transitioning. I'm living full time as Wendy. I'm changing my legal identity, and I'm going to have my sex changed as well. Don't know where, don't know when, but that's it." And the first time I ever said this to anyone was to them. "I'm an open book. Ask me anything you want to, and absolutely nothing is off limits." And Jason goes, "You shouldn't have said that in front of Chad."
So in
We
our
had the greatest conversation, Anne Marie. It lasted until
oh,
3:30 Monday morning.
oh,
And
that's
I was mind blown.
oh, it's so nice to feel. Well, they seem to be your people. They seem to have understood, and they had enough curiosity to ask questions.
It
They
was
took
the
you up on
curi
the offer. They took you up
They
on the offer.
absolutely asked questions, and word spread down the through the street, because a guy who turned out to be a very close friend and is still a close friend, Bob of Bob and Tony,
Mm-hmm.
Bob wanted nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
He told me like 4 years later he didn't even want to meet me when I moved into the neighborhood. People like me skeeved him out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, uh, Tom and David and Chad and Jason said, "No, you got to talk to Wendy. She's different.
Mm-hmm.
She'll answer your questions and you'll have fun with her."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, he had to talk to me at one of the neighborhood gatherings, and we talked just a little bit, and it wound up he reached out and we got together alone, just the two of us. And he asked all kinds of questions, and it was a very positive experience for both of us, and I was happy with it.
Mm-hmm. So
But after that whole thing in 1970 with trying this, I got married. I was married for 40 years to a woman,
mm-hmm.
and that was in part my guilt and shame, because I
Mm-hmm.
never told her about this.
Mm-hmm. Until years later.
Well, I told her in 1978. We were married in 74. So in 78, I was talking in my sleep about being a woman.
Mm-hmm.
She woke me up demanding an explanation. I was stressed to the max.
Mm-hmm.
My corporate career in technology was stressing me out. Having a family and a wife and a house stressing me out, and still trying to repress all of this,
Mm-hmm.
all at the same time.
Well, yeah, because you were living a life that wasn't your life. It was a life prescribed
Exactly.
to you by other people.
And
And
I called him my male facsimile or
yeah,
my male representative.
yeah.
That was it.
So in our later in life community, we talk about something called a catalyst. And a catalyst can be a human being that you fall in love with and you realize that you're not as straight as you think you are, or it can be a major life event. Was there a major life event for you when you were in your 60s that finally you said, I can't do this anymore. I have to come out.
There were several things that coupled together from about 2012 to 24 into 2014. My corporate life was ending.
Mm-hmm.
I looked dead.
Mm-hmm.
I was exhausted. The emotional drain, the anxiety. If I hadn't done this at age 67, I probably wouldn't have lived until 70.
Right.
My health was a mess, and it's all the negative thoughts, the anxiety, the repression, everything. Blood work was terrible, everything. And I was type 2 diabetic, and I was 70 pounds overweight.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated my life.
Mm-hmm.
That just did nothing but evolve from 2012 to 2014. November of 2014, I was actually set up to kill myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was done living. I didn't want to go on, honestly. And that was about as serious as it ever got for me. I had thought of this numerous times over the decades, but I never even thought about going through with it.
Mm-hmm.
This time I had it all set up to do. But see, the thing that stopped me in 1970 was very simply no medical support, no therapeutic support. And basically, what I found out by that age is people were living underground in back in the day when I tried. They were living underground in Manhattan or San
Yeah.
Francisco and hiding. They weren't part of society. They had no medical care whatsoever or anything.
Well, yeah, and they were also the leaders in the queer revolution too, but
Yeah,
like Sylvia Ramirez and stuff
right.
like that. I mean, they were leaders, but they didn't have like what that psychiatrist said to you, that awful thing he said to you about your freedom.
Right. He was right.
That was that he was right
Yeah.
because most of them turned to sex work because that's the
Mhm.
only way they could make any money because they were not going to get hired at a corporate job back then at all. Like I
Well,
yeah, it was
that's what really shocked a lot of my gay friends is
mhm,
because, and I got congratulated by several of them. One of whom was at Stonewall at 16 in '69,
mhm,
and um, you took everything that the girls in the '80s and '90s didn't have that you have,
mhm,
and you made the most of it.
mhm,
It kind of blew them away because the girls in the '80s and '90s that lived in this town in Pennsylvania would have never thought of going to the supermarket and applying for a job as a cashier.
right.
I did that.
Mhm,
I worked there for 3 years part time.
mhm, mhm,
And always wondered, does anybody realize?
mhm,
Well, when Huffington Post did an article about me, and when that was published, that's when I started finding the ladies coming through my line.
mhm,
Wendy, read your article. I didn't know anybody was even going to see it.
right.
Read your article. I had no idea. You're amazing. So
Mhm,
that's when I, always volunteered to have lunch, coffee, go meet for drinks, whatever, and I'll talk.
mhm,
But that whole thing, I was so close to actually killing myself in November of 2014.
mhm,
I decided, let's go see if my diagnosis changed. Let's see if there's now a possibility for this. I had no clue if I could even do it.
mhm,
I found out when I looked online, yes, it's now treatable by therapy, hormone replacement therapy, and any necessary surgeries. And it's how I was born.
mhm,
WPATH standards all drove that change. And then the insurance companies picked up transgender healthcare in 2013.
mhm,
Anne Marie, I immediately went to where my wife was sitting in the house and I said, remember what we talked about in 1978? She
mhm,
goes, yes. It never went away. She said, I know.
mhm,
Well, I now found out that diagnosis has changed. I'm going to start looking for a therapist and I'm going to see where that goes. I don't know where this is going, but That's what I'm doing. I need to do something about this. I can't go on.
Mm-hmm.
That was my life-changing moment. That day in November of 2014, I found my therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I went there, first therapy session in January, a little bit longer session because it was an intake session. Anne-Marie, I poured my guts out for the entire session. I hadn't talked to anybody or expressed any of the feelings that I shared in 4.5 decades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, by the end of the session, I got up to leave. I said, I'll see you next week. I turned to say goodbye. Stephanie said to me, "What's your name?" And I immediately snapped back, "Wendy."
Mm-hmm.
That came from fifth or sixth grade. She
Mm-hmm.
was the most popular girl in my class. She was the prettiest. If I was going to be a girl, I'm going to be Wendy.
Wendy.
Yeah, there you go.
I love it. So that was a start of I know, a major journey for you. So you found an accepting therapist and
Hmm.
you were already living in a place where you could transition. So right? You were already in New
I
Hope.
hadn't moved into New Hope yet. I was still
Okay.
living about 40 miles south of New Hope, just outside of Philadelphia, and was still living with my wife, and the family was around and all of that.
Did you guys have children?
Yep.
Okay. Hmm.
Yep. I checked off all the boxes for heteronormative.
So, so I mean, this, you're not only transitioning, but you are deconstructing your entire life, like everything you believed, everything you look like, how you looked at everything, losing your male privilege, which like my friend, we were talking about Olivia before, she's trans as well. Like she had no idea, like the type of privilege she had as a man. Um, what was the hardest part for you around all of that? I mean, the list of changes and the list of grief that people that transition go through is like monumental. What was the hardest thing out of all of it? And what was the best thing?
Um, I think the hardest part for me was actually learning how to control my thoughts, shift my beliefs, shift all my thoughts to being supportive of myself and gaining self acceptance.
Hmm.
That's what I focused on for the first 6 months of 2015 with my therapist. And I did a lot of reading, a lot of studying. Uh, about how to do all of that because transition is not just the physical aspects.
No, absolutely no.
And that's where so many people in my community focus from day one is the presentation, the makeup, the hair, the clothing, the whole bit. That is not it.
Well, it's
It's
a
you're
piece, but
in
it's not
it,
it.
it's a piece.
Yes,
I refer to that as like the remaining 20%. 80% is up here
right.
in your
Because
head.
you said gender is between your ears, not between
Yeah,
your legs.
gender is between the ears, not the legs.
So following up on that, so why is it so important to do mental health work when you're leading up to transitioning?
Because one of the things that we need to do is change the way we present ourselves and carry ourselves, our behaviors, our mannerisms, and everything to be more feminine and softer and all of that. And yes, that is also a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there are women that have male traits and behaviors and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has one or the other in kind of a mix, and there's a preponderance toward one or another.
Mm-hmm.
But you're never going to realize that unless you start the deconstruction process of all that male socialization. That's got to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you've
Mm-hmm.
got to adopt new ways. And if you don't accept yourself as a woman, you're not going to be able to do it. And you're not going to pull it off well at all.
What I remember is like, so I got married, I had 4 kids, like I said before, and I kept going to the professionals to have somebody say, yes, you're gay. Like that kept on happening. But what I realized as, after I came out is really the only person that can name my sexuality is me.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only person. And I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only person that can name your gender is you.
Exactly.
Nobody else can name your gender. They have not
Exactly.
lived in your shoes. They have not had your experiences. And so that got me to where I could accept who I was, because
Mm-hmm.
that I was a lesbian. That really helped me a lot when I realized that
Okay.
I just had to accept and love myself,
Exactly.
and then the rest would follow.
And that's what happened with me.
Mm-hmm,
By the time I was 3 years into this, I'd already had surgery.
mm-hmm,
My body and mind were now congruent. That
mm-hmm,
incongruence between gender identity and your physical body and how you are presenting and living every day of your life, when that incongruence is there, it's hell.
mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't wish being born transgender on my worst enemy.
Why do you say that?
It is brutal.
Mm-hmm,
Just trying to repress all of that and deal with the social expectations of living as a male
mm-hmm,
and uh, knowing that that's not you.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
N- and feeling that you had nowhere else to go with it. And there were times when I did look and
mm-hmm,
nothing had changed.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I knew that being gay was changed from a psychological condition sometime in the 70s. I had to wait until 2012 for that to happen.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
once I found out, I couldn't go fast enough.
mm-hmm,
Um, as far as once I started finding out, see, here's another thing. I wasn't part of the LGBT community until 2015.
mm-hmm,
I didn't know anything about it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I didn't know that there was a transgender community.
So I have to ask you this, how is that possible? Like,
It's very
I mean,
possible.
yeah, because I am like
I
even
was living a straight heteronormative life,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
completely repressing myself, and I intentionally never looked.
Well, yeah. I mean, because if you don't look, then you don't know.
And the few times that I did check, I was disappointed to find out that nothing had changed with my diagnosis.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
there was no medical support. And living in New Hope, Pennsylvania, I found out that most of the girls that live there, and there was a large community that lived there in the 80s and 90s, are dead.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
AIDS,
mm-hmm,
because they could only work as bartenders, servers, and sex work.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And during my transition when I was living there, yeah, I had opportunity for all of that, but that wasn't me.
Right, right. Well,
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I also, and this you're going to find, I don't know if you're going to find this interesting or not, but my gender identity was so messed up and incongruent with my body. I had no idea what my true sexual orientation was.
Mm-hmm,
None.
mm-hmm,
I knew I wasn't gay.
mm-hmm.
Don't ask me why, I just knew. I had no attraction to men.
Well, it's
I
just like
found
knowing.
the idea of having a sexual relationship with a man gross,
Mhm.
and that was it.
Well, and it's interesting. It's actually, it's like you just said what, like you just knew. You just knew that you didn't want to be in a relationship with a man, right? And
While I was living as one.
yeah, but also too, as somebody, with regarding your gender, you just knew you weren't a little boy.
Right.
And it's what the process is. What I'm hearing is that we often have to learn to trust our voices
Mm-hmm.
because our voices know.
Mm-hmm.
And and a lot of trans women are not gay. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be with men. They want to be partnered with women. Is that
Mm-hmm.
how, or do you identify as a lesbian now?
Actually, uh, before surgery and after surgery, I talked with Steph at great length about this
Mm-hmm.
because I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Dr. Blue Bond had assured me that at my first gynecological visit, the most I would ever be asked is, when did you have your hysterectomy? She
Mm-hmm.
said, that's exactly what it'll look like. And regarding men,
Mm-hmm.
they'll never know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I was actually encouraged to go try it out. And I took it for a test drive, as it were.
I would have too. Yeah, you might,
Yeah. I mean,
what's, go ahead, try.
Anne Marie, I had no idea what it would be like, even if I would like it. I had no idea what it would be like to date men.
Mm-hmm.
None.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm curious. I need to find out. And that way I can either go one way or the other, but I got to find out.
Mm-hmm.
I was struggling so hard with gender identity. What was my sexual orientation?
Mm-hmm.
And was that congruent with my new e- open gender identity?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it the opposite?
Mm-hmm.
Was I a lesbian or would I want to be with men?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And to actually start questioning that and working on that, I was, let's see, that was 2018. So 2018, 2019. So that was, I was in my early 70s
Mm-hmm.
and finding out what I was really, what my true
Attracted to.
orientation was.
Yeah.
Um, Growing up outside of New York City, I watched black and white TV. There were the old movies. Oh, and the woman says, let me get into something more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd been dating this guy and I knew where it was going. And I took my Victoria's Secret stuff, stuff it in my purse for that date, figuring if we go back to his apartment, well, let's see, maybe I'll try it. I'll just see how I feel. But I wanted to make a game of it. That's one of the things I did for myself, especially if I was trying something for the first time as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
I would try and make something out of it so that it would be fun for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it would help me not be nervous or scared. I won't be giving off the negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went, I got into something more comfortable. I came out
Mm-hmm.
and it blew him away.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat just for a little bit longer and then off we went.
Mm-hmm.
I was blown away. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
believe it. I actually enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked away from that night thinking, okay, I'm probably or most likely or definitely a heterosexual woman. Much to my amazement.
Mm-hmm.
That was a total surprise. I never expected that.
Is it easier to be trans and heterosexual woman? Is it easier? Because I know the women that I know that are trans and lesbians often have a very difficult time dating. Is it easier for people who are cis?
Um, I was in 2018 and 2019, I was having no problems dating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I never revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we were intimate, I never revealed. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I had no problems dating.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that I have high standards. And that's why I left most of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I like someone who communicates, can have it carry on a really decent conversation, share thoughts and feelings.
Oh, honey, you've got to start dating women.
Knew you were going to say that.
Because you honestly, that is every woman I ever knew in their heteronormative marriage. That's what they say. And
Uh-huh.
honestly, like for me, it was, a man is never going to meet my emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and physical needs. He's just not. Not because there's anything wrong with being a man or anything. I have two sons. It's just that my needs are for to be with a woman, and women are much more communicative and much more, sometimes when you've been in the heterosexual world forever and then you transition to being in the queer world, um, there's so much like talking and processing, and I always tell my clients, be careful what you wish for, because
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
be careful what you wish for. But it's your complaint is exactly what every woman's complaint I've ever heard.
Mhm,
It's like, I just want someone to communicate, be with me, and be open and be honest and all those things.
mhm. My
Yeah.
entire time of living in New Hope, all my friends were either gay men,
Hmm.
gay women,
Hmm.
um, or cisgender women.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I tell this to my clients. Any males in your life, when you transition, they're going to vanish. Some
Hmm.
will run, others will just do it slowly, but they're going to go away.
Curious question. Did you watch Will and Harper?
Yes, I did.
And what did you think of that? I'm just curious because I was because I think Will was trying to figure it all out and
Uh-huh.
really struggling a lot. Uh,
Yes, that was obvious.
Harper was very, very patient, really,
Yes.
really patient with him.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what you thought.
Well, it's definitely a different journey from mine.
Yeah.
My goal was to blend into everyday life as any other woman. I
Hmm.
had no clue whether I could do it or not. I don't know what Harper's was, but all the way through the movie, I'm thinking of Will. He's trying to be supportive, but in so many ways, he was making it more difficult.
Right. Like when they went to eat the steak. Like
Yeah,
I was really worried for both of them because
yeah,
it was like a fishbowl, and it was really, really, I was like scared for Harper. And
right.
I also thought about what would it be like for her if Will Ferrell wasn't with her, if it was just Will Smith, somebody
Mhm.
who wasn't famous. I think it would have been easier in a lot of ways
Oh, absolutely.
if she was just going around with a guy that she was friends with forever.
Yep.
Hmm.
He drew way too much attention,
Hmm.
which put her in a situation where she was constantly being outed.
Yes, he outed her continuously. I noticed that too.
It
Like,
drove me crazy, Anne Marie,
I
because
will.
in a lot of those situations, I wouldn't hesitate to walk into some of these places that they were in and
Mhm.
sit there and do my thing and be present and all of that. It wouldn't, but I also wouldn't be outing myself.
Well, it was really interesting because first of all, I want to give them kudos for doing something
Oh,
that
it
was
was an
extraordinary.
amazing.
And I want to, and I give them both kudos for showing a part of life that many people are not familiar with. So I want to give them kudos for that. But I also noticed that whenever he said something about Harper, he always outed her every single time. He couldn't just say, "Oh, I'm here with my friend Harper tonight," and not give the backstory of why he is uh, why he's with her. It was
Right.
almost like he had to explain why he was with somebody who was clearly transgender. And it was really interesting to me that he outed her all the time. I'm like, God, I hope she wants this because she's
I
out now.
never I never could tell, but I assumed that she
They
must have
must have
been
talked,
okay with it.
must have been okay with it. I would love for her to go back and do some of those things again, and without
Hmm.
him, or just with somebody who's not as well known, and be able to experience what it would have been like without someone so famous with you.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was a good, I think it gave her some passes, but it also made things harder too.
Mm-hmm. I have never been afraid
Mm-hmm.
of going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I've been I've had people say to me, that's because you have cis privilege.
Mm-hmm.
No, I did the work to change my entire mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Totally accept myself, deconstruct everything as much as possible, and learn to just be.
Mm-hmm.
Just be me. And from my now ex-wife said to me in June of 2015, I'm so nervous and everything, and you're just so damn happy. It's really pissing me off. And I started laughing. I said, I don't blame you, but I am totally excited. I'm finally going to see what it's like to be me.
Right. And I think for your wife, I mean, it blew up her life.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and
Well,
she had to, you know, and have you ever heard of the group Our Path? Have you heard of them?
repeat that?
It's Our Path.
No.
Okay, so they started out as a support network for women whose husbands come out as gay.
Okay.
And then now I've been on their podcast, and they used to be known as the Straight Spouse Network a long time ago.
Okay.
And they've told me recently, I was talking to somebody when I was on the podcast, that they get a large amount of straight spouses whose spouse have come out as trans.
Yep.
As sometimes the couple stay together. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they do. And I have a friend, Darren, who she's still with her wife. It looks like they're staying together. But a lot of times their marriages blow up, and it's a huge
Mm-hmm.
drain on a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you and your wife maintain your friendship? Because a lot of straight people would have walked away and been done.
Well, she said to me that the entire time that we were married, from 1978 on, she was worried that I would do this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at some point in time. Then, when we got into our 60s, she said, I never dreamed you would do it at 67.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then she did say to me, and this we both laughed at. She said, my first husband left me for another woman. My second husband leaves me to become a woman.
So what is she? I have a lot of questions of curiosity about her life now, but let's focus on you. I'll ask you that after we get off the air. Yes, this question here is, you said, how do you know when your transition is complete? Is it ever, Wendy?
That's a very good statement right there.
Mm-hmm.
I always answer that and explain to people this is never ending.
It is.
It
I agree with you.
it tapers off. For the first 2 years, every experience I had, everything I did, so much of it was all brand new. The first time to ever do it as a woman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The first time I ever signed my name. The moving company put me in my apartment. They left. I took off my last male representative clothes,
Mm-hmm.
dumped them in a bag for donating, and put on a denim skirt, sandals, a top. And it was July, and I went grocery shopping for my
Mm-hmm.
new apartment. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the first time I signed my name was for the store discount card.
Oh, that must have been unbelievable.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Everything, the actually walking through the supermarket. I'm not there pretending anymore. I'm me.
Mm-hmm.
A whole new experience.
It's it's incredibly liberating to have lived your life. First of all, I feel like coming out was one of the biggest gifts in my entire life. I am so glad I'm gay. Um, there is a piece of me that grieves that I didn't have the young gay experience. I never had that. I also raised my children with my ex-husband, and I would have really have loved to have raised them with my wife. It's just,
Yep.
it's just a very different experience.
Well, I came
But
to the realization early on, you can't go back.
yeah, you can't. You can't. And what it's been really like, it feels like you finally, like what my women talk about is like they feel like there's a missing piece and they can't seem to put their finger on it. Unlike you who knew since they were a child, some of my women have known a long time, but some of them just have figured it out, at
Hmm.
50 or 40 or 60 or 70. And by
Hmm.
the way, Wendy, I want to mention something. A lot of my women that come out 65 plus, they're like you. They're on a rocket ship. They don't have time to waste.
Hmm.
What I find, they're the best that go through the transition from a straight life to a queer life because they're like, I don't have time to waste. I'm going to embrace all of this. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to do that. And I find they move through the process so much quicker than somebody
Yes,
who's in their 30s or 40s. They just,
exactly.
because they don't have time to waste. They don't
Right.
can't waste with and it's so important to them. And so I really admire like how even at 67 you didn't say, oh, I'm too old, I shouldn't do this. You just were like the women I work with, you're like, I'm doing this because I need to live like myself.
A lot of the people in the community have this thing. It's TOD, transition or die.
Hmm.
I've been told, oh, you're so courageous to come out and do this. No, I'm not courageous at all. I did this to survive. That's
Hmm.
why I came out. It was survival,
Hmm.
not courage. Courage comes in when I start facing my neighbors and other people in society. That's where the courage is.
Right. Well, courage, but also the definition of courage is being afraid and doing it anyway.
Hmm.
I know a lot of us in the beginning of transitioning from a straight life to a queer life, we often like, I agree with you. It was either I was going to die or I had to do something to change.
Hmm.
And for me, it was working with as a hospice chaplain for 7 years. So I was working with people who were dying all the time. And what
Hmm.
I realized is people don't regret the things that they've done and they
Hmm.
that haven't gone so well. They regret
Right.
the things they didn't do. And I know that if I had been on my deathbed and not at least experienced being with a woman and all that, I would have had a huge regret about that. And that's one of
Hmm.
the things that propelled me forward.
Yep. I can fully appreciate that
Hmm. Hmm. So
completely.
let me ask the last question you have here. I should have you back to talk about parents and children because I wanted to keep it focused on you. So maybe you can come back sometime and talk
Oh,
about.
absolutely. I would
I would
love that.
love that. We could do that again. But what is the most important thing to do or to consider when preparing to live full time as in the opposite gender?
Absolutely. Do not skip doing the mental work to find your total self acceptance. This is not something that should be skipped or taken lightly, and it should be a primary focus
Mhm.
because everything else that you do in terms of living authentically, presenting in everyday life, engaging with people in society, it all depends on you fully accepting who you are and what you are. I don't regret anything I've done. I don't regret my past life.
Mhm.
I have I it- One, I'm grateful to him for not killing me or making me a drug addict or an alcoholic, all of which could have happened.
Mhm.
But I didn't do any of those things.
Mhm.
And I made it through to a point where it became possible. Times changed. 2012 brought the possibility to me.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point forward, I just couldn't wait. I had to do it, and that was it. And I focused on all because I was repressing this for so long, and so much energy was going into that. I had to work just as hard to let it all go.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I had to prepare myself for was to let go of everything in my past.
Mm-hmm.
People, things, possessions, everything.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to give it all up to do this, I would.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I reached. And that's what propelled me forward. And as I kept working on all of that mental work for the first 6 months, as I said, I wasn't part of the community. I didn't have any preconceived ideas that transition is difficult and takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew what I needed to do. And there's a difference between needing to do this and wanting to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was able to do it in 6 months. I've had clients who have done it in much less time.
Mm-hmm.
I view they've seen a therapist they're working with, and my role with working with them is to get them unstuck, help
Mm-hmm.
them release those blocks, and let's start moving forward. And what I found is once you start taking those first steps into your new life, it becomes exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, you're going to find joy at the other end. And I did. And so do my clients.
Mm-hmm. So
And
how do people reach you? How do they find you, Wendy?
uh, meetwendycole.com.
Okay, it's the easiest way, right?
Yep. That's the easiest way. My calendar is there, my newsletter is there, and the last link there will drop them into my blog where all my podcasts are organized.
So it's Wendy with a Y and Cole, like Cole. So
COLE. Meet.
meet Wendy Cole. So Wendy,
Yep.
did you have a coming out song?
Yes. Uh, it's actually plastered on my desktop. uh, Estimated Profit by the Grateful Dead.
Are you a deadhead?
Oh, that's why the earrings too.
Oh my God, my ex-husband was a deadhead. He used to be a taper
Oh, wow. He was
back in the
serious.
day. Yeah, he was back in the day. Yeah. Do you still follow the Dead?
Huh?
Do you still follow them? You still
Um,
go to concerts and stuff?
well, I keep track of what's going on.
Mhm.
I have Sirius XM,
Mhm.
and there's 3 Grateful Dead channels on there.
So just between, so oops, I just lost my light here. So last night I was like, there is a drag queen Grateful Dead cover band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. I'll send it to you because they're going to be in Fort Collins, Colorado, and my son lives there. And I was like,
Oh,
you can go
cool.
see them. Why do you like the song Estimated Profit?
The one particularly lyric, like an angel standing in a shaft of light, rising up to paradise, I know I'm going to shine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
And uh, I started in 2022 just getting really pissed off about everything I was hearing about transgender people.
Mm-hmm.
And that became my battle song
Mm-hmm.
to go out and use my voice to tell
Mm-hmm.
my story, my truth, and try and share with other people in society what it's like to be born transgender.
Mm-hmm.
Because I firmly believe in my entire transition experience over the last 10 years, people don't hate transgender. They don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I socialize with people, I become friends with people, and when I become friends, I reveal my entire past.
Mm-hmm. Is there a book or a movie that has really changed your perspective on life?
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh, He's very, very famous in the I don't know what kind of world he lives in, the spiritual world, the spiritual realm, or whatever. Yeah.
Both from quantum physics, which is something that I would be fascinated with if I were in college now,
Mm-hmm.
because it combines the scientific with the spiritual, and it's the study of the life force energy.
Mm-hmm. Quantum
And
spirituality. Yeah.
and I got into law of attraction early on in my transition,
Mm-hmm.
actually before I started living full time. And that helped me a lot with my energy and connection with people.
Mm-hmm.
But the spiritual aspect of it alone didn't work for me. Having more of a techie type background, I also wanted to know, well, why does all of that work? What's happening? My body is a whole system. And that's when I discovered Dr. Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And the neuropeptides and all the chemicals that the body produces are triggered by our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
If we're having all these anxiety-ridden thoughts and fears and doubts and everything, the mind communicates with the body through chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
So for decades, I was ravaging my body with all these
Negative.
chemicals that are highly addictive. You can become
Mm-hmm.
addicted to depression and anxiety. And so that explained it for me. And that was a major influence from that book.
How would you describe your life today?
I have never been happier. This has been the happiest 10 years of my life by far, over and above. Uh, it's not without its challenges. And yes, I've had my share, and
Mm-hmm.
challenges never go away. They're part of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I handle them very differently now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much more able to go with a flow. I'm I'm a lot kinder to myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I care about myself. And I know for the very first time in my life, transitioning, I found self-love.
Mm-hmm.
I hated myself before. I hated my life. I hated everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I was stuck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you learned self-kindness,
Oh boy, yes.
which is really a huge part of fierce self-compassion, which is
Yes,
self-kindness, shared common humanity, and mindfulness, which are the three building blocks for a good life.
right.
Yeah,
And being present is very important.
it is super important. Yeah, I agree with you. Well, Wendy Cole, it was lovely talking to you today. Thank you so much for spending this last hour with me. I really, really appreciate it. I would love to have you come back sometime and we can talk about parents and kids and also the political climate of what's going on right now, which is scary for a lot of trans folks and queer folks and Black folks and anybody that's not white and heteronormative.
Exactly.
And there's people that are white and heteronormative that really deeply care about all those things too.
I
So
know. I
yeah,
know.
yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. This was wonderful.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.